Welcome to Conscious Business Collaborations. And I am here today with a really special guest, Frank Wander. And what I love about him is he truly gets what conscious business collaboration means, and he gets what we plus you means. He gets what we leadership means. And he has written a really great book, and I'm going to read this title because it's a long title to memorize. It's called Transforming IT Culture: How to Use Social Intelligence, Human Factors, and Collaboration to Create an IT Department that Outperforms. So, and I'm also going to tell you what his website is now because I want you to get how he really truly gets all of the we leadership factors. His website is itexcellenceinstitute.com. And so you get clearly by the key words that he uses. He uses the words excellence. He uses the words like social intelligence. He uses the words like collaboration to create an IT department that outperforms. So welcome, Frank. I'm really excited to have this interview with you today.
I am absolutely excited to be here. I think, we and you is the future. The companies that are winning have got it. And I think you're on the leading edge.
Well, I really appreciate that. One of the reasons why I created the title of the show to be We Plus You, Conscious Business Collaborations, straight talk about conscious business collaborations, is because I wanted people to get what We Plus You means and what we leadership is so important. I think the old paradigm was I leadership, and I think the new paradigm is we leadership. What do you think about that?
I think we leadership is the new paradigm. There are a lot of different names for it. If you look in the research actually that academia does, they call it authentic leadership. There are a lot of books written about servant leadership. Servants are really all about caring about the other people under you and unleashing the full talent and potential of those people. So you can't possibly be a winning company if you don't get the we leadership.
So can you share a little bit about the book that you wrote? Because that's a very long title and it's a very impactful title. However, as we were discussing before we went on air, you were saying that the title, so explain a little bit how the title came about and exactly more about what exactly the book's impact is.
Well, I'll tell you, Wiley is a fantastic company. They were the publisher of the book. They work with me. I originally went to them with an idea to create a book on transforming culture. But having been a CIO across multiple companies and having been on the talk circuit across all the conferences, they felt that I would do best by really focusing on my audience, which was IT. So I did take all of the theories I had and wrote the book about transforming IT culture, where I used IT as a lens into why collaboration is so powerful. And the background on this is I was a turnaround transformation specialist, went across companies, and I realized IT was failing not because of technology, but because of social pathologies in the environments, basically antisocial behaviors. And that was the root cause, and I researched it.
And so you and I, and this is where I'm really excited. As you know, I love the study of the mind. I love psychology, and for me, I've studied massively theology, psychologies, NLP, and just I could. It's like going down the rabbit hole, if you will. So let's literally, okay, and we're going to put a liability clause right here because where you and I are going, we're going into the land of the Pandora's box of psychology. So if anyone's having any sort of suicidal thoughts or you are, make sure that you're seeking your proper doctors, following their advice. Me and Frank are not your licensed doctors or psychologists. However, we are going to be talking about psychology. We are going to be talking about issues that some people may find offensive. This is our personal opinions, so I just want to put that out there. So let's dive into this because I agree with you, and you and I have had discussions about this. So actually, I'm going to let you start this, and then I'm going to come back with some things that I agree with. Sure. So dive right into this because I love this subject.
Well, I tell you, it was fascinating. I began doing turnaround transformations very early on. First one actually was just a transformation of an organization. Then I was turning around failing projects. Then suddenly I was turning around departments, and I moved between companies and turning around divisions. And about, it was the third or fourth time I did a turnaround, I saw a pattern. And the pattern was that the social fabric of productivity, this is the collaboration you speak of, but IT is a great lens into why collaboration is so critical because a particular solution or business system could easily be the product of 100 different minds. And each one of them is contributing a piece of that solution. And the social fabric, which is held together by trust, is actually the fabric of productivity. And that's what I wrote about in my book. And if you don't have a trust-based environment, and if you don't have a staff that's not just present, but in a productive state of mind, then in fact you can't actually do IT. It doesn't happen, and projects fail. If you look at the statistics, IT has been failing really since the 1960s, when the first big modern IT project, OS 360, was actually undertaken. And although that project succeeded, it was 4 times over the original budget. So this is an old story.
So let's get into why these people are failing. From my experience, what I've seen is, and you and I have talked about, is the antisocial behaviors is because as much as, this is a really cool thing. So technology, and you and I are talking on Google Hangout. There's Skype. Right. We have cell phones. So we have the ability to connect in ways that was not there years ago. No However, question. The problem is, because technology has advanced so much, is people aren't getting out. So their behaviors are becoming, that people are becoming hermits. They're becoming antisocial. They're becoming so introverted to such a degree, the divorce rates are going up phenomenally because people are being so addicted to their computers, they have actually lost the ability to truly connect. We're human beings that seek and crave human interaction. That means human to human interaction, not computer screen to computer screen interaction. So why don't you run with that? Because that is part of the antisocial behavior.
You posit a very interesting theory, and I would say it's valid. Here's what I see happening. Humans, at their root essence, are social animals. Humans are tribal. Humans could not exist in a very, very dangerous world over the millions of years we evolved from our early primate ancestors individually, because we weren't the fastest and the strongest. But at some point along our evolution, empathy emerged. And that empathy was actually the original basis of bringing people together into social organism. We see that in the studies actually that they've done in universities, Yale most recently, where they have the Infant Cognition Center, and kids are basically wired to prefer people who are pro-social. And that's what the research showed. They took 5-month-old babies. So the wiring is very, very clear. You can see in the fact we have mirror neurons, which allows an individual to experience the feelings and emotions of another person directly through their own nerves, because the person's expression ends up being reflected into their own feelings. And this is the root source of empathy and compassion. We're wired for it. And during the industrial era, something very interesting happened. Humans were dehumanized. That's what factories actually created. They took craftsmen of a prior era, they stood them on an assembly line, they valued them for their hands. Being present at your workstation during the times you're required to be there mattered. And we dehumanized an entire area of workers, leading to union and unionization. It's very, very clear what happened. But as we get into the information economy, what we really need is people who are connected, because people are hyper-specialized. They have to be connected, but as a result of the industrial era, we dehumanize people. And if you dehumanize somebody, then your needs matter and theirs don't. And you have this incredible breakout of, selfishness and greed that's corrosive and destroying not only the corporations that engage in the selfish behavior, but destroying a lot of lives and families. In terms of the lack of, social interaction that we see in society, or let's call it quality social interaction, I believe the emergence of all these social tools are a direct response to that void that exists. People need to socialize, and if they don't, they'll reach out in other ways. So we see this huge explosion in social tools. And as, if we wanted to have a sociological discussion, I think that's a very fertile area, because you've hit on something that is clearly evident in the society to me.
And I agree with that, and I think we will explore that a little more. But one of the things you were talking about, the wiring and the synapses, that is kind of like the contagion factor. So like when one person laughs, literally another person might laugh. Or if one person, yawns, the other person yawns. And I love that contagion factor.
It
In a group, like with the babies, it's the same thing. It's that contagion wiring. It's such a wonderful, magnificent thing. And the thing is, I really love social media. I think social media is an amazing tool. And I think it's an amazing tool for people that are stuck at home, that are disabled. So I'm not poo-pooing social media. I think social media has, I mean, that's what I'm saying. So there's the one aspect of social media or technology that I think has been an amazing, valuable tool. When I'm getting at those, I think we need to learn the balance of the tool. I think what's happened is that some people have gone over to the other side, if you will, of the tool and have abused it to the point where they're on social media to the point where they don't even see their spouse or their children because they're becoming like literally addicted. And they're not having literally human-to-human interaction anymore. They're having interactions solely with the screen. And again, like we've said, is that people crave human interaction. So I think as a society, we need to literally limit, when we have children, give them a time limit with their Nintendo or their Wii, whatever. We need to set some sort of boundary so that people are having, literally get their kids outdoors to have nature time with the grass, with, you know what I'm saying? We really do need to get our kids outside more and get them interacting with animals and other human beings, not just with the box, not just with the screen.
Yeah, Carly, I think it's absolutely the case. I believe social interaction is important for kids so that they learn to work well with others, right? Social interaction, the famous saying, I learned everything I need to know in life in the sandbox. Really not true, but a great cliche about the importance of early socialization of children. The whole thought of mirror neurons and laughter is contagious and yawning is contagious, that is mirror neurons in action. There is no question about it. And in fact, Science of Edra in 2005 did a study, I put it in my book, showing how mood is contagious. And of course, that should be an alert to every leader to make sure that in fact they've got a positively infectious mood, not a negatively infectious mood, because all of these things matter when you're in the workplace and you have maybe 100 or 1,000 people working for you. That's an incredibly destructive force if you have somebody who is negative on top, given all of the neuroscience, and IO psychology that proves just the opposite.
Well, where I was going about why it's so important to have the human interaction is, again, you don't learn. It's like if you look at children playing, they're learning when they're playing. So if we don't have children getting out there, or even adults, and that's especially important as adults. We as adults forget to play. And here's the thing, it's when we're playing, we're growing, and that is where we're learning collaboration. So if we're just in front of a box, we're not going to learn collaboration. And in business, it is vital to be able to learn to play on a team. If you can't collaborate, you can't play on a team. And if you're going to be an I energy and not a we energy, you're going to have a really lousy business, because businesses thrive, with the we energy. They thrive with collaboration energy. They do not thrive with an I energy. And so that's why I'm saying why it is also vitally important to teach our children to get out there and play, to get out there and interact with others, because that is where they're learning the we energy, where they're going to learn to collaborate. So when they do get older and they do go to thrive in business, even if they want to be an entrepreneur, it's very vital they learn to collaborate with others. So those skills of being with others is so important to develop that, so that they can learn to thrive in those environments. If we're constantly in front of the box, if we're constantly in front of the computer, we're solely in an I environment, and we actually lose the skills of interaction on a different level. I mean, being on Facebook is interacting. It's not the same, though. Yes, you have a tribe. It's still not the same energy. It is and it isn't. You know what I'm saying, right?
It's not. Well, it's not actually. A lot of psychology will show that people can actually feel and take in the energy of others. And some people get very, very motivated and high energy when they're in a group, and they won't get that same energy when they're alone. The fact is that emotional energy is a tool that businesses need to use and understand in a positive way. Social intelligence is a tool, no different than a process is a tool, or understanding a particular business system is an incredible competency. Social intelligence is a tool and an incredibly valuable one. Behavior is a tool. Pro-social behavior in particular is a positive and productive tool that companies should embrace and use. All of this stuff matters, and it's very, very important. So collaboration underpins success. It is absolutely the we era that we're in. The I era, you could have command and control and be the big I on top making it happen. There are so many thousands of hyper-specialized skills in a company. The I on top can only unlock the potential of the people. They can't do much on their own. And quite frankly, you know, you can get a force like Steve Jobs who believes in something deeply and will go out and acquire the best talent and create an environment where people can excel. And he was good at that, even if he was tough.
Yeah, he was an interesting character. I've actually knew some people that actually knew him, and he was tough, except he did actually know what leadership was, though, even though you have to get to know him. I mean, you know, because he wouldn't have gotten where he was if he didn't. I mean, and that's the thing.
Collaboration, totally.
Exactly.
These videos on YouTube of him talking about how collaborative Apple was.
Exactly. I mean, you know, and here's the thing. Anyone that's really, really famous and has really gotten somewhere, you're always going to find people that are bashing them and calling them evil and that they were, you know, this or that. You know, however, they wouldn't have gotten where they were if they didn't know some collaboration. Because there's no way you can get to that level without having some sort of collaboration. And, you know, and the thing I always tell people anyway is, like, money only makes you more of what you already are. If you're an evil money person, then you're just going to be more of that. If you're someone that was a person that was collaborative and that was a nice money person, you're going to be more of that. So that's all that money does. The more money you have, you're just more of what you already were. And that's just been my experience.
Well, I think that's right on the money. The interesting thing is Steve Jobs didn't even care about the price of the stock, actually. He wasn't motivated by money. He was motivated by doing something important, creating something that really made a difference, you know, changing the world, which he talked about. So you're right. It's who you are, and money just makes you more of that.
Yeah, he was a brilliant, and here's the thing, too, is you have to understand, most brilliant creatives, they are out of the box. They get there is no box. That's what I love about people that are like that. They get there is no box, and they don't play by the same rules. They don't play with any rules. They go way beyond the rules. It's kind of like, you know, and so it does. It pisses people off, and so people start, you know, they say what they're going to say, and you just kind of ignore it, and you go next, you know, on to the next thing. And so that's just the way it is. I mean, you know, what are you going to do about that? Nothing. You just move on. So I'd love for you to share a little bit more about the book, though, because I'm really excited, actually. Unfortunately, because of when we got introduced and the time lapse, and I didn't get the book, so I'm really excited to read the book. So I'd love for you to share a little bit more about the book, because I think it'd be something that would be really valuable to people. So can you share a little bit more about the book?
My book is about really social intelligence, human factors. If you wanted to net it out, you could say that it's the first operator's manual for the human infrastructure. That was my original thinking behind it. People know everything about their computers, their processes. They know everything about the network. They have an operator's manual for a $50 piece of equipment. They have nothing for talent, nothing. And they know nothing about it. And in fact, it's a blind spot because workers were dehumanized during the industrial era. They were not important. Machines were important. Consequently, that culture and that belief system has been inherited and passed down into modern management. And it's in conflict with the information economy and knowledge work. Companies like Google, companies like you know, SAS, these are companies, Val, they get it. They understand the importance of culture and people. They understand why it's important to create an environment where people can flourish. And they get the fact that if your people aren't flourishing, you won't either. And at the end of the day, that's what my book is about. I go through all the different human factors. I go through servant leadership. I go through collaboration. I have a chapter on organizational citizenship behavior. Dennis Organ wrote a lot about that, founded it. I actually hired a social psychology PhD to do some research with me because I had used and employed a set of tactics that worked great to build high-performing IT organizations, but, you know, it was my opinion. And I didn't realize that there was a science behind all of this that had been well known for over you know, 80 years. You can go back to the Hawthorne experiments, and if you wanted to net those out, it shows that caring about your people is highly productive. Productivity went up 25% when the company became engaged in what those workers were doing and cared about them enough to change the lighting levels.
So you just said something, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you just said something that was so important right there. caring about your people. I can't tell you how many times I've consulted with a company and their CEO didn't want people to know how spiritual they were or how sensitive they were or how, you know, it is so important to be as authentic as you possibly, I mean, seriously, the more authentic you are, the more you're going to reach your people. And the more you reach your people, the more they're going to embrace you. And the more they embrace you, the more you can lead. I don't get people that are like, seriously, this one person I worked with, they were like 5 people within one. In other words, when he was leading his company, the people that worked for him, he was one face. But when he went out and he went to his club, his fitness club, his people that saw him there saw a different face. And then when he went to go, for example, sailing, his sailing buddy saw that particular person. But then when he was home and he was doing his, he loved to draw, for example. So when he was drawing, and he actually liked to do yoga and draw. So like his spiritual, like he had like, you know, he was 5 different people. And he didn't want the people at work to know that he actually was an amazing artist and he liked to do
what a shame. What a shame.
You know,
what a shame.
But his sailor buddies, you know, so when he was sailing and he was doing his regattas and he was like, you know, working out and lifting weights, that, you know, he had that, you want everyone to see that side of him. That he was, you know, buff, and then he was a sailor, you know, and then he drank beer, you know what I'm saying? It was like, he didn't want anyone else to see that side of him. And it was like, however, that side of him was beautiful. That is where if he led from that place, you know, it's funny because I would get feedback all the time from other coworkers that he was a lousy leader. He was a horrible president. Because
he wasn't trusted because he wasn't authentic. You couldn't trust somebody like that because people see through that persona immediately. It's phony. Humans are incredibly intelligent. Incredibly intelligent.
I'm so sorry for interrupting you, but when you said that, it was like such a vital, vital point because people don't realize how important it is. And the same thing with if you have stuff out there, air out your. I don't mean air out your laundry. However, if you have a past or something that's, you know, not necessarily pretty, don't sweep it under the carpet because it's gonna come out, and then you're gonna get burned. It's like my past is out there. My clients know I've had X amount of surgeries. You know, my husband committed suicide. They know my stuff. And the funny thing is, they know that I can also help them with serious stuff because I've been through serious stuff. Otherwise, you know, you might be having I might be having a conversation with Frank, and all of a sudden, you know, in our conversation, I go, oh yeah, I went through this. And they're like, really? You never told me that. Then it's like, what else is she not going to tell me? Then the trust gets broken. You have to be honest about your stuff because if you're not, and I'm not saying in your first conversation just blow it all out there. I'm just saying, you know, you have to let people know or write an article about it. I've written an article about it. That way it's like, you know, here, go read my bio. And that way it's out there, and I haven't lied about it. It's there, and I don't have to go spiel it all out in a sentence, you know what I'm saying? It's just there in an article. Go read my bio. And it's out there. That way I haven't lied to anyone. I haven't done anything stupid. You know, it's there. But don't hide your dirty laundry. Don't sweep it under the carpet because it's going to come out to bite in the butt, and then there's no honesty factor.
Totally.
You know, it's such an important thing. I want to go back to a couple of things you said, though. Go back to, in your book, you talk about human factors. So I would love for you to touch upon at least 3 human factors that you think would be important for people to know about to actually create a better working environment.
Number 1, caring, empathy, and compassion. They're all related. I always use the word caring at work because I don't think traditional corporate America was really ready for empathy and compassion. But, you know, I used to say that as an organization, we're really going to care deeply about one another. We're going to be open, honest, and transparent. And we're going to create an environment, in essence, because we care about one another, where people are safe to create. And you need an environment like that because people have to be in a productive state of mind. If they're not going to be innovative and creative. So that caring, empathy, and compassion, that humanness, being true to who we are, like you say, is incredibly important because that is the basis of trust. When you care about others and you show that caring, it means you have their back and you trust them. And the minute you trust people, the fact of the matter is they can relax. They're in a safe environment. And when people are in a safe environment, they're in a productive state of mind because every human has a threat sensor, right? The amygdala. It's part of the limbic system. And if the threat sensor is stimulated, people are not going to be able to do cognitive work. They're going to be focused on the threat at hand, whatever that might be. Typically, it's a peer or a supervisor. More often, a supervisor that's ostracizing, bullying, threatening them in some way. So that caring, empathy, and compassion, showing that, is just incredibly, incredibly important. When you get down to trust, is an incredibly important human factor because it's a social fabric. You build trust by creating an environment where people don't just care about one another, but one of the human needs is transparency. People need to know that there are no threats around. That's why creating a transparent environment where there's no hidden agendas and you encourage people to speak up and say what's on their mind really, really matters. Creating a blame-free environment. Blame is so socially corrosive and destructive to cognitive productivity. The minute you blame people, they begin to shut down. It's not only a loss of face, but in fact, it makes them really not willing to take a risk in the future, because blaming people for things that go wrong, unless it's a repeated mistake, is absolutely wrong. People can't get anything done if they're not trying something new. So failure is often just a learning experience, and in fact, the only thing that matters are repeated mistakes. Those are real errors, and those become performance issues over time. So there's so many. Meaning. People need to find meaning at work. There are a lot of ways to do it. And helping people move around to find something they care about is the most important way to do that. You don't want people trapped in a role where they absolutely don't like it. They're not finding meaning. They're not going to be motivated. There's so many human factors. We could go through a lot more if you're interested.
Yeah, actually, why don't you name at least two more? Because it is. I think this is something that would be really valuable for people.
Well, there's another human factor actually is collaboration.
Yeah, my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, humans are really designed to work together. I believe that if you look at the sociological record and you look at the tribes and other things, you can see not only that people cared about one another, but in fact they did things as a group. Humans succeeded by becoming groups, and ultimately that led to these larger tribes of cities and other things that we see around us today. But the most successful work in corporations is people collaborating. The days of Thomas Edison, laboring on his own or with a small group of people are long behind us. Things are so incredibly complicated. And to create a collaborative environment, you've got to reward it. You've got to really encourage people to work together, to be open and honest with one another. It is one of those things that really, really, is unrivaled in terms of its productive capacity. Another thing, I talked about the amygdala. These antisocial behaviors is a negative human factor. There's prosocial and antisocial. Prosocial behaviors are helping behaviors. Antisocial behaviors are really socially corrosive. They cause people to engage in protective behaviors. And of course, if you have antisocial behaviors in the workplace, what you've done is you've destroyed that human social fabric, the fabric of productivity, the trust. You've broken all the bonds. If you can imagine an organization as a set of different threads that have been put on a loom and pulled together, prosocial behaviors pull those threads really tight. Antisocial behaviors begin to break the threads apart. And that's what you see in these modern corporations where no one is actually engaged or collaborating. They're just participating in a race to the bottom, wasting their money on payroll, keeping the machine running, but actually really making no progress. And they're treading water, and they will be the dinosaurs that'll be going extinct over time.
So I'd like to touch upon is two more things. So you talked about not telling people or making them wrong. And I do believe that that is definitely something that can cause a lot of triggers. And when you talk about them triggering, like what I like to call it is the flight or flee response. And when, of course, as you know, what happens is when they go into flight or flee is that all the blood drains from their brain and it goes to their hands or feet, and then they start to panic and they do irrational things because they're not thinking clearly because all the blood is drained from their brain. So they start doing things that are stupid and like literally, and then it's not good. However, so a part of what I teach is it criticism or is it feedback? You need to start teaching your people how to actually communicate. You can tell someone the same thing in a different way. If I tell Frank, I love you, but Frank is going to immediately hear the but and then he's going to kind of freak out a little bit and go, oh God, what's coming? And if I tell you, Frank, I love you, and the and is a softer way of saying something. He knows something's coming. It's just not something as maybe dramatic. I think, it's like there are ways to say things where it's not criticism, it's just feedback. So I think we really need to actually have literally meetings where we're talking about communication. How do we communicate one another? Because to me, I love feedback. Because I know that feedback, I can take that feedback and choose to learn from it and grow from it and do something with it. Or I can take the feedback and go, you know, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
Or I can take the feedback and do something with it and literally integrate it and apply it and go, you know what, maybe there is something here that I could do something with. Or maybe, or it's going to trigger something in me that is going to bring my inner, 2-year-old up and I'm going to have a tantrum. So it's just the way we say things. A lot of times we say things and we're just really mean about it. So we need to really learn our tones. It's no different. Now here's another key about that. I don't give people feedback in an email. If you have something to say to someone, pick up the phone or email or do an email. Say, hey, I'd like to have a conversation. Are you okay? Can we talk? Look at our schedules and find a time that would work so we can actually have an in-person meeting or have a phone call. Because an email is a very flat conversation, and as we all know, one person, 100 people can read an email, and all 100 people are going to have a different take on the email. Right? Yeah. So don't give feedback in an email.
If I care about you, I'm going to take the time to meet you face to face and have a discussion on the topic. And like you said before, it's a difference between the and the but. People understand intent. If your intent is to help the other person, it'll be very, very clear. But more importantly, as a leader in an organization, you're either trusted or you're suspect and not trusted. And if you're trusted, then you have a track record of helping people by finding things that they can work on to improve themselves and delivering that feedback, not being that blame-oriented person or the one, who's the bully that ostracizes others to make themselves look better in the organization. So it is very clear to the people what's going on, and there's really no hiding.
I agree with that. I just think I really shrink back when people don't give feedback, because I don't think that's helping either. I think that's enabling. So I think we need to actually, have the conversation that, we're an organization that does give feedback. However, we're also an organization that gives feedback in a way that's empowering, not disempowering. So that's the only thing I did want to bring up, because I think that's so important that we do give feedback. It's just that we learn to give feedback in an empowering way, not in a disempowering way. So anyways, I think I'm going to have you back again. I just don't like to do these interviews when they're like an hour long and then people tune out. I really want to keep people's attention. Yep. So for today, I'm going to let you end with 3 things that you'd love to leave the audience with, and then we're going to have you back again, because I really love I love talking to people like you, because your mind is very brilliant, and I love brilliant minds.
Thank you.
I could talk about conversations about values and collaboration and anything to do with the psyche. I could talk about forever. I love this type of conversation. So anyway, so yeah, please leave the audience with 3 more tidbits about whether it be about human factors or about just things for leadership or anything you'd like to leave the audience with.
Well, number 1. Each of us has a responsibility to help make the world a better place. I wrote my book, and I do a lot of interviews and things because my goal is to help bring human understanding to the workplace. I think human understanding is an incredibly powerful tool, but more importantly, if we can get corporate America to understand that the human factors and understanding and caring about others drives productivity and success, then in fact we can have corporations where not only are the companies flourishing, but the people are too. I see that in many, many companies out there. It is happening. But those are the companies that get it. Those are the enlightened ones. A lot of them come out of the technology industry in Silicon Valley, where they've built environments where people can flourish. And I think that just couldn't be more important. And I believe every individual has a role to help get the message out that this matters. So people should take a little time to read and understand this and be an agent of change in their own right. Secondly, I think as individuals, people could benefit greatly by spending a little time understanding what I call the human infrastructure. If they want to, on a personal level, outcompete, knowing and understanding more about people will make them, of course, more sympathetic to others. When people actually stick to a point of view, even when they've been proven wrong, knowing that cognitive dissonance has been written about since the 1950s, and it's just all too human to do that. We, don't want to lose face. That's what it really comes down to. Makes you more accepting of others. We're all human, and these are human traits and human sensibilities. So they can become an agent of change, but they can actually use this information to outcompete in their own right. Lastly, I think as a civilization, we've got to reintroduce caring and rehumanize work. I think nothing could be more important. People spend so much of their life at work in the office that if we have environments where people are witnessing these caring and outgoing behaviors, where people are using social intelligence to build really, really effective companies by getting the best out of their talent, ultimately people model those behaviors and they'll bring them back home into their personal life, and it'll change the way the whole civilization and the society works. I see great times coming. I believe we're entering this era where we're in an inflection point, and I see the industrial era and the pathologies of the industrial era introduced, falling to the wayside. I think it'll be a change where there is obviously a little chaos along the way. That's how these inflection points go. But I believe the future is bright. It's one where there will be more caring, because those are the companies that are in fact going to win. And as people leave the Googles and they take those really good practices with them, and Google, by the way, is a product of good design, it's not an accident, then more of those companies will spring up, and that's what really gives me, I think, a very positive outlook on the longer term.
Why, thank you so much. It's been it's been so much fun having you. Like I said, I just love having this type of conversation. So thank you so much. So you've all been listening to We Plus You, straight talk about conscious business collaboration, and I've had the wonderful honor of having Frank Wander with me. And you can reach him at www.itexcellenceinstitute.com. And you've had your host, me, Carly Alyssa Thorne, with you, and you can always reach me at www.carlyalyssathorne.com. And as you all know, I absolutely love feedback, so please feel free to leave me anything you'd like to know more about. And as always, I leave you for tonight, and I will be back next week. So for tonight, have a great night, everyone. And as always, I will leave you a link with a page that has an embedded video and an embedded podcast. And enjoy, everyone. Have a great night, everyone.
Have a great one. Thank you.